Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 62 verse 1 and 2 from the New King James Bible says this: Truly my soul silently waits for God. From him comes my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defence. I shall not be greatly moved. I'm with Lily Leah, who lives in Ramat Aviv. Now Lily, where were you born?
I was born in the Freie Stadt Danzig. It was once a little state where Germany was of many little states. And this one is, at the time, 1938, I was born. It was a kind of two little cities were kind of a state, like Monaco today. And my mother was finished architecture studying. And my father at the same school, Technische Hochschule, it was like a Technion, studied engineering. And the 1st of September 1939, the first gunshot or bomb shot of the World War II was in Danzig. Yes, it's a fact. At 4 or 5 in the morning. I know that my parents heard it, so I assume that I heard it too. I was 1 year and 2 months old.
And what was life like as a child there when you were growing up?
I don't know. We left because of the Nazis that came, and my parents couldn't work and couldn't. My mother had also her parents and 2 sisters, but they were eliminated somehow. And there was a possibility, Eichmann let people buy the way out for money at the time. Hitler at the time wasn't killing the Jews, but he wanted Germany Judenrein, free of Jews. And you could buy a way out for money. So my parents, I don't remember all this. I was 2 years old. I know it from reading and from papers and so on. We left. When I was 2 years and 4 months old, we left Danzig. Now, me and my mother were in one transport, and my father in another one. We met only after the war. My mother took, I guess, there was organization of Hamosad Le'aliyah Bet, young Israelis who tried, they bought old ships, all the ferries, and to get people out of Europe to Palestine. And we had to go to a port was called Tulcea in Romania, in the Black Sea. So my mother and I think it's the first picture that when you get aware of something, she had a big rucksack, like brown one with a brown leather, and on the side was hanging a night pot, Sir Laila. It was hanging outside. And so she traveled with because people thought that they go for 2 weeks. Maybe go for the ship, and it takes another week to come to Palestine, and that's the story. It was nothing. And it was about to be the winter in Europe, it was cold. And we took, as far as I know, part of the way was with train. And then in Bratislava came many more people from Vienna, from Prague, from Bratislava, from Brno, from many, and became a few thousand people.
Were these Jews coming together?
Yes. Also got permissions. We got permission to leave, but we did not have a permission to enter. We had no certificates to enter in Palestine, where the British mandate, and we didn't have a permit to come. We had a permit to leave. And so we came to this Tulcea, city port in the Black Sea in Romania, and there the Mossad Le'aliyah Bet organized 3 ships. One was the Pacific, one was the Milos, and one was the Atlantic. I was on the Atlantic. Me and my mother were on the Atlantic. The 3 ships left, 2 ships left, and the Atlantic took a day because just when they left the port, they went on a big stone, a big something, and they had to repair it. So they waited and left 1 day later.
Do you remember being on the boat?
No, I don't remember. I was 2.5 years, not even 2.5 years old. I don't remember. I have a book. This is a book, a woman who was there. She was 20-something when she came to Mauritius, and she got from Prague, and she got married 3 months ago beforehand, so she was with her husband. And she wrote here a book, Eile Chayai, This is My Life. She lived in Kiryat Chaim or Kiryat Be'alik, and the voyage of the ships is the same, more or less. But so I read here, and I have another book, a painter who was on the boat, made drawings, and I even hear some of the ship, and so, and also I read how it happened, what happened, because I couldn't remember anything. I mean, I think nobody remembers at such a young age, and with so many differences. 1 minute you're here, and the next minute you're somewhere else. The people didn't have certificates to enter to Israel. They bought their way out of Europe, and they hoped, because many such transports who came to Palestine, they stopped not in a port, in the sea, and people from the kibbutzim came and took them through the fields, and so they also hoped that they will come, we will enter. But the voyage wasn't so simple. There were in the Atlantic were about 1,800 people, and it was really a boat that goes in the kind of a fun boat, like on the Danube or on the Seine. Yes, a pleasure. Yes, and the people were standing. If you move this a little bit, there are pictures of what it looked like. And this is Gdansk. Now it's Polish, so it's called Gdansk. At my time, it was a free city. Freie Stadt Danzig it was called. German-speaking. Yes, it was German-speaking, and it's my mother tongue, German. I speak, write, and read German. Here you see the boat, the people standing. There was no place. They were sleeping all on like bunk beds. Bidiuk, like sardines. They were sleeping one next to the other in a few layers. And for the mothers and little children, there were some more. They gave the upper, or I don't know. Till now, I cannot be around people.
Maybe I should ask, what was life like on the boat?
The life on the boat, personally, I don't know. After a day, the ship stopped in Turkey. And the Jews in Turkey brought food. In a boat, they brought food, and the ship stood there one day, and the people brought food, and I don't know what help, whatever. Then the next stop was, I think, Cyprus. Also got some help, but on the way, the captain felt that it's not exactly a good transport, and he wanted out. So he threw the coal out from the ship. So the people from the Mossad L'Aliyah Bet took him, closed him in a room, and there was no coal. So they started to putting the ship apart, all wood parts. They like windows, doors. I heard also from somebody the piano, everything that was wood and could be burned to move the ship. They put apart, and it was like a box, and people inside with nothing. Of course, there were no toilets, and which was a big problem. And they made a hole in the side of the boat and hang a blanket. And this special boat that we were on Atlantic had a flag of Panama. So they said, we're going to Panama. It's kind of, we're going to the toilet. And till people go, they went back to the queue because you could wait hours. Yes. Many people, every day, some jumped out, and some people died of illnesses, of inconvenience or whatever, and then they were thrown out to the sea. After they put the ship apart, kind of, some on the way, they met British warships. Now, the two boats, the Pacific and Milos, were ahead of us. And we were always a day later. They met, I think, two British warships who helped because they called out for help. Because there was nothing who could burn, and they were moving only with wind. And the British warships helped and took us to Haifa. But the British in Haifa put us to Athlete, to the camp. You know the camp. We have been there. Yes, the detention camp, yes. There's a picture here of it. You see the barracks of Athlete. Like they're still now. I read this week that they're going to renew it. Yes, to make it so it could stand for another few generations. They're going to organize it.
So how long were you on the ship and how long did it take for you to get to Athlete?
I think that we left Tulcha on September, sometime in the middle of September or something. We came to Haifa. Now, on Haifa, when we came, the ship stopped not in the port, but a little bit outside, and they asked people to get into boats, and they took them in Haifa on אחד הרציפים, where they can stop, was a ship that the Palestine, the Mossad LaAliyah brought called Patria. And they wanted to try to stop the British from sending us further to Mauritius. So they put a little bit Homer Nefetz, explosive, on the boat. And they asked people from the Atlantic to go over there. And they thought there will be a little bit noise and so on. And the British will wait a day or so. In the meantime, maybe something in the politics can help and so. And they moved to the Patria. My mother, I remember telling me, she waited from the Atlantic to move to this boat. And in the meantime, there was a big bomb explosion, and the Patria sank in 10 minutes, and about 257 something drowned, and some got alive out, and they left them in Palestine. And us who left, they took to Athlete back to this camp, and there were talks, and they decided they take us to Mauritius, whatever. They didn't want to leave the people in Palestine.
So you were in Palestine, and then they were going to now move you to Mauritius.
Exactly. That was the point, that we were already here in Athlete, sitting, and they didn't allow us. They were akshanim, stubborn. They didn't let us stay. So after a few days, I think we were in Athlete some 11 or 10 days. It was November. The Patria blew up on the 24th of November. I remember that you made once and took me. There was a remembrance, a memorial for the Patria, and you invited me, and I came there, and it was very touching. You gave us big roses, and we threw them to the wall. It was, when I talk about it, it was very, very, very touching. So about 10 days, they decided to they brought new boats, Dutch ones, something, and they decided to take us to Mauritius. The people decided that they will be stubborn, but they won't fight with guns, but when they came to take them, the women and the men were naked, and they thought that the British gentlemen will let them stay, but they threw on them blankets and took them into trucks and took us to another, I think 2 ships there were, and we went about 16 days through the Suez Canal to Mauritius. I was 2.5 years old.
Yeah.
We arrived in Mauritius on the 26th of December 1940. It's Christmas. Yeah. A woman wrote that they took us in buses or trucks or whatever, and the people of the island made hello, hello. Yes. Now, Mauritius. They separated men and women. The men they put in a big building of a prison. They took out the prisoners. Here, this is the inside of the prison, and there's a picture, this one, you see, it's windows with something of shade. I remember seeing movies sometimes, and you see a prison where the metal rails and steps in the middle of metal and doors, and this was exactly the same. The prisoners they put somewhere else, took them wherever. After we left, it became a prison again. Wow. So men they put in here, and boys after more than 12 years old. The cell was about 1 meter of 2, with a window with bars. They slept, as far as I can remember, they had, call it hammock, and they had a little orange box or something as to put something. And we had, against mosquitoes, a big net, such as that we open at night and over the whole bed, because there were a lot of mosquitoes and there was a lot of malaria and a lot of typhus. And this is the gate to the prison inside the building. And here they made a camp, they built barracks like are in Athlete. Big ones, very big ones, with the walls was of aluminium, it was of metal, because when there was rain and it was like drums, very big ones, and they put in each one maybe 20 women with children. No walls, no separation, no curtain, no nothing. The floor was of wooden, this I remember, and we had like what we call mitot shel הסוכנות. Very simple beds. There was, let's say, my mother's bed. There was one stripe, my bed. There were 2 wooden. There was the next woman. יאקי, את זוכרת את יאקי, he came with me a couple of times. Who was also, his bed was next. His mother was next. Another. And so there were a woman with 2. Yes, there was no separations, no nothing. Only we had this against mosquitoes. I don't know. I was there from 2.5 years, so I don't I have a kind of a view in my head. And I can't tell you if it's from reading or I began to understand. I was 2.5 years old. I don't know when children begin to realize the world. But there we lived till we left. The barracks, there were many. They were made ABC, and I was the barrack number C, C-Baracke in German. Outside there were some toilets. I don't remember if it was only the holes or a toilet. And there was a Hadar Ochel, because we got food.
Dining room.
Of course, a dining room. We got food, 3 meals and so on. That was Mauritius. We stayed there 4 years and 8 months.
Wow.
After the World War ended in April or May 1945, and we were supposed to leave, they started polio among children. And so they postponed. I remember one was, if he still is alive, he was about my age, he was having polio on one leg. And so they postponed it, and we left in August. And we arrived in Haifa. They sent good ship, a normal ship called Franconia, I remember. It was a real ship. My mother and me, we got a sail and a normal ship. And the people of the Sochnut were already there and arranged the certificates or whatever. And we arrived in Haifa on the 26th or 27th of August, 1945. So we were from December 40 till August 45 in Mauritius. Wow. Under the sun. Of course, if I go to a doctor, they say, why you have from the sun? But they put us in the sun in a bath with water, and we're sitting, in the warmth in the sun. Nobody knew at the time that it's not so good. The weather is like an African weather, was storms. And at the beginning of 45, January or something, was a terrible cyclone. And the roofs were
flying off the barracks?
Yes, and trees were all over. It was a terrible, and people tried to run to the men's camp. Now, life in general, it's 2 first years, the commander of the island, it's a small island, a few kilometers to each side. I saw once a map of an undersea, and it is the top of an undersea mountain. Something, the two islands, Mauritius and Réunion. Réunion belongs to French, and this was British. Now they're both separate. And the 2 first years, the commander of the British commander, I have somewhere the name, were quite strict. They didn't let the women and men meet, for example. They made outside kind of a tent, and couples met there. It wasn't, I guess, very romantic. And I remember the policemen or the soldiers were like, I remember in Israel afterwards, the police, the British kalaniot, we called them, and with the pants till the knee and socks still up, and so wide pants, and they were also like this, and with a stick, holding this, and they patrolled, and so afterwards they let people go, women in after a year or something, but by 6 they had to come out, and later by 9, and after 2 years the commander let the life be much easier, and people, they were quite intelligent people, were engineers, were teachers, were doctors, and so on. Some of the engineers, for example, worked for the management of the island. They took them to build roads, and I think one even was on building an airport, such things. They used the people, the doctors. I have a picture, not here, of doctors and sisters and teachers, and they started to make in the island to organize some tarbut, culture. They made, for example, they found people to write. The father of the woman of Ziva that made this, who was in Mauritius from Vienna, he used to write feuilletons, for example, about the life, and so somebody else, they found people, of course, playing the violin, as always, and they made a kind of an orchestra. They made evenings of playing, they made of poetry, they made a theater, and there were painters, and there's one Beda painter who made caricatures, and they organized a school, and I was there in the kindergarten. The mother of Ziva was a kindergarten. She was I remember, and then I was also at school. I made Kita Aleph first year at school in Mauritius, and I have a certificate that Beaubassin's camp school in Beaubassin, and that I learned in German, very good in reading, in writing. Yes. And
the school was in German?
Yes, everything was, official language was in German. But if a group of people from Czechoslovakia spoke among themselves, their language was, but the official language was German. All the people knew German. When we left in 1945, Mauritius was left a cemetery, a Jewish cemetery, with 127 graves of people who died from illnesses or old age or whatever, and the cemetery is very cared after. And we had a group, and we collected some money, and it was transferred there, and the place is still looked after. I know Rosie was there, and this is a cemetery.
So where was your father at this time?
Was a completely story. My father, I don't know why, they went different. But they were not the only one. The grandparents of Ziva, who made this yesterday, her father and her mother were with us, and the mother and another daughter was with a transport where my father was. They went. I didn't study it exactly, but I know, I have an article, once he gave an interview to Maariv in 1961, and I have it somewhere. And they went, I don't know where to, but they got stuck. It was September, October, and the ship went towards what was Yugoslavia. Now it's separated, but at the time it was called, and the ship got stuck in the ice. The river was frozen, and the ship about 3-4 months couldn't move. They got stuck in the ice. They got some help from the Jewish community somewhere, offshore from the Yugoslavia. And the Germans, I don't exactly know, I know the end. They took them to Yugoslavia, to a place, I remember the name, and they dig a hole and they shoot. They put people in and they shoot. And my father and another man were hit and they got out. And the whole women, men, everything, her grandmother of Ziva and the daughter.
So they survived an execution.
Okay, they were put in this hole, like the Germans did many places, like in Babi Yar they did. Also, yes, and he got out of this hole, of this with another man, and he flew. He flew through mountains, he was in Italy, he flew, then he went to the Polish army. He was Polish originally, he was born in Poland, and when he finished school, he came to Danzig to study the Technic school.
So did he have to pretend to be dead?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I can't tell you what he pretended. He got out. He wasn't wounded. He wasn't shot, and he went out. I don't know. Wow. And he went all over Europe. I don't exactly can tell you. At the end, he was in many fleeing. I know that in Italy a family helped him, not Jewish, and then he flew through mountains and they climbed. I don't know, he went somehow to the Polish army for a time and then he went somewhere else. I don't know. At the end, 1944, I think, he had an uncle, a brother of his father in Geneva, and he went there. And he was in Geneva because I visited them afterwards, this family, in 1960 after I was in the army, and so I went once to see them. And when my father heard that we came to Palestine, he came also. So a few months afterwards from Geneva to Palestine. But my parents couldn't live together. It was impossible. Everybody had their life story, and that's it. And after many years, each one married, yes.
So do you remember coming into British Mandate Palestine?
Yes. This I remember. I remember here, we saw the soldiers with the red caps, and we call them kalaniot, like the anemones, the flowers in Israel. Yes, and they had the red, like the tzanchanim. And we remember, we call them כלניות. אתה זוכר את הכלניות, הבריטים? כן, בוודאי. People, I was 7 years old, and they made many times עוצר, curfew. And then I was living in the 3rd floor, so I went down to the 1st floor to a family, and from the balcony we saw them passing. Yes, so, but for us it was fun, but they were looking for people who helped shoot them or do some things. But as children, I went to school, and my mother found some job, and my father was separate.
Do you remember when Israel became a nation?
Yes, of course. I was 10 years old, and I remember my mother going in the evening, dancing in the streets, and she had a sister here. And yes, I remember the noise, the joy. Of course I remember.
Must have been a big celebration and a big happy time to have your nation.
Yes, it was a very... Yes, but unfortunately what happened now, we don't like.
Yeah, it seems sad that you've survived war and you've been through war. Yes. You're in Israel now, and today you're going through war because of a dreadful terrorist attack.
All my life is in wars. Because in Israel we had many wars, every few years, 7 years or something, there's a war, מלחמת העצמאות, מלחמת סיני, מלחמת I don't remember all the names now. Okay, every couple of years, that's my destiny, to live in wars.
Now, you left where you were from
Danzig,
Did that save your life, getting out when you did? Although it was a big you went into ships and you went into Mauritius and Athlete and things. Did that save your life, escaping that place?
We never went back. My mother never, she didn't want to hear about it. The generation who lived through the war don't want to talk about it. You hear it from everybody. Only the grandchildren start to ask. People didn't. They started a new life. They had the new worries about paying flat, about buying food, about living, about illnesses. They didn't want to talk about the war. Nobody. If you hear people, nobody wants to talk about it. Only the next generation, they ask, and so they open a little bit. But people wanted to forget. They want a new life. They have the new worries, and there was no talking about.
But getting out of Danzig so quickly saved your life, didn't it? Because your parents responded so quickly. Otherwise, they would have probably been killed in the Holocaust.
Yes, okay, that's it. Her parents were killed, the parents of my mother, who I guess were 60 or something. And I guess they thought they had money, that they buy their way out. But no, they were taken to a ghetto and they were killed.
So you came here to Israel, or you were in British Palestine. It became Israel.
Yes.
Did you get married, have children? You've got grandchildren?
I did not get married, and of course at the time there was no having children without being married. So I guess the whole story, my life, I wasn't in my brain.
What is your prayer today for Israel? You've been through so much yourself, and you're seeing Israel in a very difficult position today. What is your prayer for Israel today?
I hope that there are too many people, there's too much talk, there's too much, not politics, ugly politics. It's ugly politics. It doesn't forward the country. It's ugly, and, I can't open the TV. I don't want to hear. It talks about this and this puts ugly. It became, unfortunately, and very sorry, and very many people make European passports because they don't believe that, I guess they don't believe that, that politics is so ugly and becomes uglier every day. I hear something in the evening, it's unfortunate, unbelievable what's going on. And so I'm very sad about it. I can't help much, If there will be votes, I, of course, will vote not to what's going on now. But I can't do much. And it's ugly, it's unpleasant, and it's very sad. That happened. Therefore, I passed through all these stories to come, and this is the end of it. I don't like it. I'm not happy about it. I'm sorry. I'm not happy about it.
Is there anything you'd like to share?
Mauritius is the first mail stamps are the most expensive in the world. If I had one, could buy Tel Aviv. In 1847, they printed the first bulim, mail stamps, in Mauritius. And some of the stamps are the most expensive in the world. Now nobody uses, but there are still collectors. Yes, and I still have from my father an album with stamps. Wow. Yes, I don't know what to do with it. But they have the most expensive stamp. The Mauritius, before the British came, they were Dutch and French. And the French made a big, from the sugar canes. They made, I think till today, they have industry of sugar in the island. Although the British afterwards came, but the French still continued, at least at the time when we were there was a big sugar industry. Nowadays, I have just 2 weeks ago in the newspapers, there was a reportage of 2 pages about the heaven of Mauritius, the white sands and the trees and the fantastic hotels. And she writes that she invites people to come on a holiday to Mauritius. The barracks doesn't exist. They took them down, and the prison exists, and the prisoners are still there.
When you grew up, what did you become? What did you work as?
I worked, of course, I finished school, high school, and I went to the army. And I started working at Tel Aviv University, who is just around the corner here. And I worked at Tel Aviv University for 30 years. Part of the time I was the secretary of של חוג לימודים.
Study programs.
And then I studied to be a librarian. And 15 years till I retired, I worked at the school, at the library of the משפטים, of the law school. I was at the library of the law school, and it was quite nice. And now I see lawyers at TV. I know he was a student. Judges, she was a judge. She studied. He studied. I remember. Yeah. Yes.
Well, Lily Leah, thank you very much for sharing today.
You're welcome. And I'm happy somebody will hear the story.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.